The first question is, how does your education, background, and/or experience make you a better choice than your opponents for the job of sheriff? That is the question, for which you have 3 minutes, and part of that 3 minutes you can use for whatever other statement you'd like to make. Introduce yourself, what your background is, that type of thing. But the question is, how did your education, background, and/or experience make you a better choice than your opponent for the job of sheriff?
Good evening, folks. First of all, thank you all for coming. My name is Jake Brady, and I hope at the end of the evening I win a few votes here in the audience. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about myself. I've been with the Sheriff's Office. I just started my 24th year with the Sheriff's Office. 22 of those years, I've been a field training officer, which I consider to be probably the most honorable thing that I ever have done or ever will do in my lifetime. It is the handing of the torch from one officer to another to actually explain the duties and to ensure that those duties get lawfully carried out to our public, or to actually act in the law enforcement capacity as a law enforcement officer. 17 of the years of my career, I've been working nights, weekends, and holidays. I've done that not necessarily because I've had to, but because I enjoy it. That is where the front of the fight is. It's where the most crimes occur. And with the newest officers on the job that need the guidance and direction to properly carry out their duties. In addition to that, in the last 9 years, I've been a sergeant. My entire career has been in the Marathon area, but I've had specialized posts in a SWAT team and dive team for a number of years. Been a volunteer fire department, a firefighter for many years. In part, I've also been, a thing that makes me a well-rounded candidate is that I have a military background. 6 years with the United States Marine Corps, hoorah for any Marines in here. In addition to that, as answering the question on what I bring to the totality of circumstance to be the next sheriff, I would say that in part, it's my role as a family man. I'm a proud father of 4 adult children. 2 of them are in the law enforcement arena. One is a Homeland Security agent for Homeland Security in BWI Airport. My 26-year-old, my 25-year-old is currently a deputy sheriff with Monroe County. And if I'm not mistaken, he should be suited up for duty and working as we speak in the Marathon area. My daughter, who's with me, Rosanna, just graduated nursing program, FIU. She's going out in a nursing career. My 22-year-old daughter, Jillian, is a beautician. And what I say that brings to me is that I bring family values. I'm a Main Street working class Republican who understands what it's like to budget, run an organization, because there is no other organization that's worthwhile running than a family. You cannot spend what you don't have. You have to budget for every emergency. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and together you can accomplish more. That's what I'll bring to the Sheriff's Office: leadership with humility and passion. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question was, how does your education, background, and/or experience make you a better choice than your opponent for the job of sheriff?
I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Bill Grove. I'm a Republican candidate for sheriff. I'm a married father of 3 young children. My wife Casey and I are expecting our 4th child 2 weeks after the August primary. So she's a little busy. Thank goodness she's here with me and making it through. I began my law enforcement career in 1996 with the Florida Department of Corrections. I served several years with the Department of Corrections, being promoted to sergeant and transferred down to South Florida back in 1998. I worked there for several more years and eventually moved on to the Miccosukee Police Department, a small municipal police department in Miami-Dade County. There, I began working as a law enforcement instructor back with the Department of Corrections and continued to do that at the Miccosukee Police Department, became their training officer, their background investigator, a general crimes detective, their trainer for all of their law enforcement training. I continue working at the police academies and for the Department of Corrections and Miccosukee training officers. In 2005, I decided to further my career by joining the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. And I started working in 2005 in Alamorada as a road patrol deputy. I worked for the Sheriff's Office for several years, was a detective with the Sheriff's Office, and in 2010 decided to further my career. Staying in law enforcement in Monroe County, moved over to the State Attorney's Office at the State Attorney's Office in Monroe County, where I continue to work now as an investigator. One of the things I think that sets me apart as far as me being able to lead the Sheriff's Office is I'm the only candidate up here that's worked at other agencies besides the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. I am very proud of my time with the Sheriff's Office, although I haven't worked at the Sheriff's Office as long as the rest of you gentlemen. I only worked here 5 years. The Sheriff's Office does a great job, but we can do better. We can improve, we can continue, we can take the torch and improve on what they've done, on what they've built over the last 25, 30 years, building up and making it better and better. The problem is with the Sheriff's Office right now is the turnover rate is still 10.5% at the Sheriff's Office. The lowest it's been in 10 years, but still 5 times greater than Miami, Broward, and West Palm Beach. And that causes us problems. That causes the community problems. Because the officers that come to your house in the middle of the night to respond to your calls generally have 1 to 5 years experience. Our command staff and our upper echelon has a lot of time, a lot of experience here at the agency. And if we could keep these officers here, our community would benefit from that. But our community is continuously paying to train officers for other communities. We're continuing to pay that expense, and we don't get the benefit of their experience, and we continually spend that money.
10 seconds left.
I'm Bill Grove, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tom Pizek. I'm a Democrat candidate for sheriff. Grew up in the Keys, came here in the early 70s, graduated from Key West High School in 1977. Went off, spent some time overseas. I spent 7 years in the Air Force and was awarded for the work that I performed there. Came back to the Keys, spent some time working as a mechanic. I'm used to getting my hands dirty. Came to work at the Sheriff's Office under Billy Freeman days as a dispatcher. Worked as a school resource officer, field training officer, a community policing officer, bicycle officer. So I know what community policing is all about. Also spent time as a Marine unit. We first started trying to get the thing off the ground. I was actually doing work on the vessel, trying to save money. A lot of jobs that I held at the Sheriff's Office required self-motivation, initiative, and in a lot of cases, no money. I was opened a storefront on Big Pine with zero money, and we were working with the tax collector. I have a family person. I have 3 children that are here in the community. I'm big on community events and actually working with the community. I have experience with several organizations, Board of Directors of Rotary, Fraternal Order of Police, President, past President, several terms as State Trustee, Inner and Outer Guard, JCs, President, Vice President. We also helped organize the Big Pine fireworks and got them going again. I have the experience. I'm not afraid of getting my hands dirty. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to improve what we got. We got great people working for us. A lot of them are here tonight. We need to do a better job. We need to look at the budget, make it clear and concise, streamline management, become a proactive versus a reactive agency, improve our training, and I think we can do a great job for the community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Matt Koval, and I've lived in Monroe County my whole life, and I have a wife and 2 daughters. I attended Florida International University, where I have a associate's degree in criminology. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I am the only candidate that's running the Housing College degree. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 32 years, and during that time, I was a field training officer for 23 years, an acting supervisor for 23 years. I was in K-9 for 14 years and supervised that. I was on the jet ski patrol for 4 years, the bicycle patrol for 4 years, and I've been involved in many community projects through the Sheriff's Office. Also, 2 of my highlights that I had while I was with the Sheriff's Office is I saved 2 people's lives during my career and received the Sheriff's Medal for that, and I'm very proud of that. One note is I've worked for 4 sheriffs since I've been with Monroe County. 2 of those sheriffs were Sheriff Freeman and Sheriff DeFore. Both those sheriffs had no police background, had nothing to do with law enforcement, had nothing to do with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. But they both were elected sheriff. So you don't have to work with the sheriff's office and work your way to the top to be the sheriff. So, and those two sheriffs are very good sheriffs. But the one common factor between the 4 sheriffs I work for is they all had college degrees. So I do value education. I think it's very important. I think it's important for the sheriff to have the highest education he can. And I also think it's important for the sheriff to be connected to the community. I'm very involved with the community in Upper Keys, and I'm also very involved with the officers I work with. I know what they want, what they need. I know where the problems are, and I believe that I can fix the problems and build a better relationship between the community and the sheriff's office and their officers. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for the hospitality here at Pennington Wake. We appreciate it. I am Rick Ramsey. I am with the Sheriff's Office. Been with the Sheriff's Office for 25 years. I'm currently the second in command of the Sheriff's Office. I've been the second in command for over 8 years under 2 sheriffs. Currently Sheriff Perham, prior to that Sheriff Roth, who both have confidence in me to be the second in command, the Chief Operating Officer of this agency. I'm proud of this agency. I'm proud of the men and women of this agency. We do great things all the time. Crime is down 8.1% this year. It's continuing to go down. The budget's down. Budget's down $900,000 less than it was year 2006. Retention of our employees is the best it's been in over a decade. Yes, 10.5%. That factors in everything from people retiring, people who are terminated, people who start a job but just not for them or don't make it through the probation period, and obviously people who do leave. We understand this is a difficult area to get and keep people because of the economy. It's not just the Sheriff's Office. Everyone else down here has a hard time keeping people. I started as a patrol officer. During my career, I've worked every single position this agency has. Went from patrol to traffic sergeant, detective sergeant, narcotics sergeant, detective lieutenant in charge of all investigations, captain of the jail, captain on patrol, lieutenant colonel, third in command. Last 8 years, full colonel, second in command. I have the backing of the sheriff and the prior sheriff. I've got over 4,700 hours of specific law enforcement training. Of that, over 1,600 hours is specifically in the area of supervision and administration of law enforcement. I'm a graduate at FBI National Academy. I'm a graduate at University of Louisville, Southern Police Institute's Command Officer School. Both are 3-month academies, top-rated law enforcement management administration academies anywhere. Gentlemen behind me are great guys. I know them, I work with them. What I have to offer is the experience of working in every division, every unit, every special team, SWAT team commander, DI team commander, field training supervisor. I've oversaw and worked in every unit. I bring the supervision aspect, the management aspect, the administrative aspect. 22 of my 25 years has been as a full-time supervisor, leader, manager, administrator. I'm the only person who has law enforcement management experience. I'm the only person that has law enforcement administrative experience. I'm the only person that has budget experience in law enforcement, creating, managing, administrating multi-million-dollar budgets. I'm very active in the community. I tell people I'm committed to the community. I've been a volunteer since I was 18 years old, starting out as a volunteer fireman for over 15 years, going to the rank of deputy chief, second in command. I currently sit on over 10 boards: United Way, Children's Shelter, MARC, Guidance Care Center. I'm committed to the community. I'm committed to you. I'm Rick Ramsey. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Would any of the gentlemen like to respond to anything that any of the other candidates said with regard to that question?
Yes, I would.
You have 1 minute for that.
Yeah, first of all, folks, I'd like to point out that it is right. Crime is down. But the person who just spoke didn't have anything to do with that. He was sitting in an office somewhere. The other 4 candidates were actually out there working, supervising troops, and fighting crime. Okay? As far as leadership, as some of the candidates point out, it doesn't require actual being a police officer. We can actually turn off the lights here, and most of the positions, or actually all the positions above the rank of lieutenant, are appointed. That means one person gets to pick who gets to do that job. And not all of us were born Richie Rich. We didn't have a special set of circumstances for special people. And most of us have to work for the positions that we have. We go through the ranks, we pay our dues, and we play nice with the other folks in the neighborhood and try to keep your crime down. That's what I've done. That's what several of the other candidates have done. And I would challenge that my budget experience, my training, I forgot to mention earlier that I'm actually and attending college, I believe, as one candidate
That's
mentioned.
time.
I believe education is important. I'm almost finished with my bachelor's degree as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to respond?
My opponent talks about budget experience. He has none, so I'm not sure what he's referring to when he says my budget experience, but that's 0. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. I'm not sure about the Richie Rich, or I'm not sure about what it says about earning your way and working your way up. As I indicated earlier, it's pretty clear. 25 years working every single position, promoting through the ranks, taking the sergeant exam, passing, getting promoted. Taking the lieutenant exam, passing, getting promoted. Moving into investigations, corrections, patrol, administration. Not like I went from a deputy to the second in command. I have worked my entire career to be here today, to know every aspect of this agency. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you, everybody.
Actually, I'd like to talk about that budget experience, okay? Because I have a family of which someone else doesn't have, and you have to have budget experience to run a family. Anybody knows that? I'm sorry, folks. Everyone has to pay their bills. Everyone has to pay their bills with the money that they make. Okay? That's all I'd like to say about the budgeting experience.
Excuse you.
Would you, any of you, the other gentlemen, have anything to say in response to that?
I think we're done.
With that one, okay. Okay, the second question, if the overall trend toward budget cuts continues, that's nationwide, the sheriff's office will most likely have to reduce its budget as well. Have you contemplated where those cuts would be made and what the potential impacts may be of those cuts? That would be 2 minutes for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of our budget is taken up in the upper management. We have several people making 100,000, a few making over 100,000. Several people making 100 grand. There are a few that are making more than that. Part of the problem with the agency is that we've gotten very slow. We've gotten very compartmented. As years went by, there's little kingdoms throughout the county. I think with the reduction of the upper salaries, the streamlining of management, empowering our mid-managers, the sergeants, the ones that are actually running the shifts, I think we'll save some money there. I think working faster, better, smarter, with additional training, and working with a true community policing program, community of partnership, I think we'll be able to save some money and be able to meet the needs of the budget.
Now I regret letting Tom go before me. It's my opinion the sheriff's office is administratively top-heavy, or administratively fat. In 2007, we made a bunch of reductions to the sheriff's office. Eliminated 4 Marine Patrol units, eliminated 2 SRO positions. They're actually still there, but they're funded by the school board now. At the same time, they did eliminate some administrative positions. Because wisely, they saw the economic downturn coming, or saw the beginning of it, and started acting accordingly. Fortunately, since then, we haven't reinstated our Marine Patrol units, our presence on the water, or refunded those SRO positions. But we have added administrative positions, including one that pays over $108,000 a year, a position that didn't exist until Sheriff Perriam took office in 2009. It was created by Sheriff Perriam, and it's, that's my phone, that's why I can look over there. It was created in 2009. It didn't exist before. So I just believe we're administratively fat. Another candidate, and since I jumped in front of Matt because I wanted to steal his line, On an average day in the county, you'll have 13 supervisors. Average day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You'll have 13 supervisors for 13 officers. That's way, way too many. That's a problem. We're administratively fat. We haven't readjusted for that. And yes, there's going to be budget cuts. But we can spend our money more wisely. We can trim the fat at the top. And we can take care of, and get more officers on the road, take care of the public. And get Marine Patrol units back on the water for our county that leads the state in fatalities and boating accidents.
Well, the other two pretty much said everything. But when I get in, I will talk to all the administration I have. I will evaluate whether their positions are needed or not. I'm going to look at a lot of different items that are difficult to find in the budget. The current budget that I looked at is very vague. It doesn't go line by line. So once I get in, I will evaluate where all the money's going, and I will make a decision at that time. Thank you.
Well, we have made a lot of cuts, and those are cuts made by myself and Sheriff Roth, and then later Sheriff Perriam. We cut our workforce by 10%. We cut our budget back to 2006 levels, and those were to making difficult decisions. So we have shown fiscal responsibility. If I had to make cuts, I'd be looking at keeping patrol cars on the road longer. I would look at taking cars away from civilian employees. I would look at top management and administration to see if there's any cuts could be made. If so, where? Consolidate where I had to or could. If, depending on the ability of the budget, how bad it was, and what type of cuts we had to make. Potentially look at cuts at the financial level for management administration. I would not cut law enforcement or correction services. Those are critical. We made the cuts back in 2006 that we went to the bare bones. Anything past there will be create public safety issues, which are unwilling to do. So, but we have done a lot. I think people here know it. We've done a lot. We've done more or less. The men and women here who I think are proactive, not reactive, made it happen. I don't take credit for the work they do, but someone has to run the ship and be the captain and set the goals, set the objectives, set the tone for those agencies, and to make more or less and make those decisions. So while I'm proud of the crime reduction, and the men and women here are in large part responsible, but I also take some responsibility for that too as well. So thank you.
Actually, we agree on that. Thank you.
Did you hear him? They agree on that.
We do agree. And actually, I apologize for earlier, because actually normally we get along pretty well. But these are tense circumstances. We're all fighting for the same position, and let there be no mistake, it is a fight. However, I would say that in agreement with several candidates, there is a continental divide on our philosophy on how top-heavy the agency is and how to manage the upper levels of our agency. As I indicated earlier, there are many people in the agency that are served over the rank of lieutenant and are appointed to those positions. Those appointed positions, those people serve in a limited capacity of high risk in offices and for exorbitant pay. And the point is we need to look at getting more officers either on the street or even cutting the number of officers we have when our crime is down. We have to make sense of every dollar we spend. And that's what I'll do, is I'll watch our dollars and I'll make more sense. Thank you.
Does anybody have a response to anything any of the other candidates have said to that? Uh-oh. We move on to the next question. The next question is, why should the public care who becomes the sheriff of Monroe County? You have 2 minutes for that. Anyone?
Folks, we should all care. And I'd like to bring something out, actually, that Joyce said earlier about the power of the vote. And thank you for that. We as Americans, people all across the country, our military men and women, fight for that right to vote. Some of them die for that right, even in foreign lands. The power of that vote is the power of choice. As I indicated, a lot of positions are either appointed in the agency or those people are determined by one person. This is an opportunity, which I believe, and Joyce might even bring it up later, on the exact number of voters in Monroe County that are eligible to vote. But the point being is 40+ thousand people interview each of the candidates that are up here and are going to decide who the next sheriff should be and why. And why is it important? Because I believe that there's a system in place in the keys, and we talk about it, sometimes we joke about it, it's called the bubble system. And the same people have been running the show for 25+ years. We have in the sheriff's office, $43.5 million or plus $1 million budget, that those closest to it get to take deeps, grab the most, and most people have their head in the sand and aren't even paying attention. I'm tired of being part of the problem. I hope to be the solution, and I hope that you vote for me on August 14th. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Pardon me. The question is, why should the public care who is the sheriff of Monroe County? You have 2 minutes to answer that.
The public should care because the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. The men and women who respond to your homes in the middle of the night if something goes wrong when you call 911 all work for the sheriff's office in incorporated areas, obviously not in the city. The men and women who risk their lives 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year on the roads, coming to your house and protecting you, and risking their lives and doing that every day, every hour, every day for a year, protecting you, controlling the people in the jail. Because the sheriff also runs the jails in the county. And the men and women that work there put their lives on the line to protect all of us. It's hugely important. It's the most important race in the county. If I could convince everybody here, if nobody voted for me, but I convinced everybody to vote for someone and come out and get involved in this race, then I've succeeded. Because it's the most important election in the county. It's the most important job in the county. You're the leader of the men and women who are the bravest men and women that serve our community every day, day in, day out. And that's why it's important. I believe the sheriff's office, like I said earlier, does a great job. We can do better, we can take it further, and we can serve our community better. And that's what I want to do as your next sheriff. I'm Bill Grove.
Ladies and gentlemen, why should you care? $42 million worth. It's more than a Fortune 500 company. You need to think about who's leading that pack. Who's going to be the one in charge. You need to think about a Marine unit. We're leading the state in fatalities and accidents. There's nothing to be proud of. It's pretty sad. We have the same responsibility as we do on land, on the water. We're a waterborne community. We like to spend our weekends on our beaches, our sandbars. We enjoy bringing our family, our pets, and we should be free from threats and intimidation and reckless boaters. Another item we need to look at is our highway. US 1 is a lifeline for everybody. Our family travels it. We go back and forth to work. We have 3,000 to 3,400 calls for service each year, reckless and aggressive driving. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to take some of that fat from the top. We need to put it on the road. We need to keep our families and friends safe. We need to increase training of our law enforcement and corrections people. We should have the best professional agency anywhere in the state. Our environment contributes to our uniqueness. Ladies and gentlemen, the sky's the limit. Think about who you vote coming up in this next election. Vote Tom Petek, Democrat, for sheriff.
Well, it's important because we need to get someone in who's going to improve the areas that need improvement and fix some of the problems that need to be fixed. There's a lot of good policies in place, but there's some policies that need to be replaced. We recently had a policy where it restricted the speed. I agree with that policy, and I think the officers should slow down. But with that came another policy that for an officer to respond to an emergency, he must get prior supervisor's permission. I have a problem with that. There should be a policy set in place where there's already predetermined emergencies so you don't have to get permission. And why that's a problem to get permission, when I've been working on the road and an emergency goes out, sometimes it takes up to 5 to 10 minutes to get a supervisor to get permission. Every minute counts when you need to get to an emergency. Also, some of the supervisors are afraid to give permission because they've been told you will be 100% liable for that officer if he has an accident or anything. So sometimes they won't give permission. And I've seen calls go out where there's been accident with injuries, domestics with violence occurring in progress. I've had calls where CPR was being done and officers have asked permission to respond in an emergency response and they were told no, they could not. I heard of an officer once requesting emergency assistance. That supervisor that was working said no, you cannot respond in emergency response. I think these policies need to be updated and fixed because there should be a set guidelines that say under these circumstances you can respond as an emergency. Anything outside of that would require the supervisor's approval. And there's many more other policies that are similar to that need to be updated and improved. And I think we need to get the right people in there so we can fix the problems where they're broken. We also have we have a lot of great technology, but it's not always working because we don't test it in the field first.
That's time.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Well, I do agree, this is the most important job right now in this county. No disrespect to any other candidates, but the officer's job, it's got the background, heart's in it, it's part of the community, someone that you know, believe, respect. End of the day, I believe I'm that person.
Does anybody have any response to any of the answers that any of the candidates gave to that question?
I want to rebut just real fast the speeding policy. I did put that in place, and that's another executive decision, making the right decisions. You always hear about speeding officers. You probably hear it, you see it, you say, man, that cop's speeding past me. Well, I had enough of that. I want officers to do just like you do, just like you're expected to do. Drive the speed limit, drive responsible. This policy came into place after a very unfortunate, a terrible crash involving one of our officers doing 106.3 miles an hour to nothing, to no call. There was no call. An officer was not answering the radio. The officer was not on a call. She was looking to find him. Unfortunately, she lost control, crashed, and perished. After that, I put my foot down as a leader and said, no more. I did put a policy in place which says you have to have permission from a supervisor to run Code 3. I don't want an officer right out of academy, 21 years old, deciding how he or she is going to drive or how fast. 5 to 6 minute response for an officer to give approval is untrue. You can ask Sergeant Walker
That's
right
time,
here.
but I'd like to ask a question. What is Code 3?
Oh, I apologize. Code 3 is with lights and sirens response, high-speed runs. I apologize.
Okay.
Well, first, I'd like to say I do agree with this speeding policy. I don't think officers should speed. But the policy that I'm talking about, it really has to do with training. I think we need to improve the training of the officers because if we have the officers trained properly, they know when they need to speed and go to a call as an emergency and when they don't. The problem is our training is not at its best. It could be much better. It needs a lot of improvement, and our field training officers need to be better. And the problem is that officer that was speeding that day, I'm having to assume that her training wasn't well, because if it had been, she wouldn't have done what she did. Because any experienced officer, well-trained, would have known not to run an emergency response at those speeds for that type of call.
I don't want to assume what that officer thought or didn't think of our training. And I say we have some of the best field training officers anywhere. Some of the best men and women. But I will still say a leader steps up and makes the right decision. Prior to that policy, we were totaling out 4 cars a year. That policy was 2 years ago. In 2 years, we have not totaled out 1 car. That says the policy is working. It is right. It's making it safer for the men and women to make sure they go home, safer for you on the streets, and reduces liability and exposure to the sheriff's office and the county. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm concerned about the speed too, the excessive speeds, running the calls. But I'm sorry, if it's your loved one that's laying on the floor and that officer is closest. Or if it's a bank robbery, we should be running to that to protect the citizens of the county. Yes, there's a limit of how fast we go and how we do it. That falls on the additional training that we need to do. We've had 3 officers that have died in traffic crashes. We need to improve what we're doing. Yes, we need to be smarter about what we're doing. But I'm sorry, there's a point in time if a family member is laying on the floor having a heart attack, and we're the closest person to them, and we have to take our time to get there. That's not an excuse. That's not a good policy. We need to train for what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be the first responders. Thank you.
The reality is 25 years I've worked here, there have been 5 officers from the Sheriff's Office killed in the line of duty from car crashes. Half the men and women killed in the United States law enforcement are killed in traffic crashes, responding to calls, most of which, as they reviewed them, did not require the speed they were running. Training is awesome. It's imperative. We have great training. After that, I purchased a brand new driving simulator, state of the art. Same driving simulator which is used at Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, where we practice on there, backing, driving, stuff coming out, lights and sirens, and we evaluate the driving of the officer and give them room for improvement and work with them to make sure that they are doing the best they can and we have the best training possible for the men and women. Thank you.
I'd just like to make one comment, which is tied into some of the things that were mentioned earlier about the low morale, high turnover, etc. That does affect the overall performance of the officer out on the street. It's also affecting the overall performance of the FTO that's training on the street. And as an FTO supervisor for 9 years who supervises those troops on the ground each and every day and interacts with not only the trainees but the officers, including training the officer that unfortunately perished in that crash. The point is that unfortunately we're getting to a point of diminishing returns. We have, in some cases, the blind leading the blind, and it's currently happening right now where we have 1-year officers training new officers. Why? Because of the level of turnover in this agency. You're not having as many experienced officers passing on that torch. In some ways, what Tom mentioned, on knowing when to run and when not to run on specific type calls. And I do agree with Colonel Ramsey on the fact that the supervisor should know what's happening, and I agree that it's not a 5-minute turnaround on a decision, because I'm one of those supervisors that makes those decisions. But there are cases that it does require somebody to take the initiative and get there regardless of supervisor approval, and that comes from an experienced officer in the sense of what Bill Grove mentioned earlier. We have a lack of training on the lower ground levels of the 1 to 5 minutes. That's where the experience comes in. You have to have experience with experienced officers at the top. Thing.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to drag this out, and I've been sitting here the whole time didn't think I would be able to comment on this because of my personal feelings about some of the officers who passed away recently. Colonel Ramsey, and I don't want to get into details about anything, Colonel Ramsey did bring in the simulator, which I think is an excellent move for training our officers and keeping them safer. It is the #1 death of law enforcement officers in the country driving their vehicles. Officers should not be speeding up and down our roads when they're not going to emergency calls. Absolutely not. They should follow traffic laws just like you and I do in our personal cars going to and from the grocery store. It's unacceptable for them to do so. I don't want to mention specific incidents that we talked about because I don't want to cry in front of a room full of people. I don't think that the policy you put in place would have fixed the last 2 deaths of our agency. I don't think it was a training issue. It was officers doing their job, and it was officers doing their jobs.
This time. Can I ask a question? I'm confused. Is the regulation against speeding only with regard to going to an emergency call, or just I don't understand. It applies to what situation?
Basically, what we teach people in the police academy, an industry standard, and it might even be policy in the sheriff's office right now. you're allowed to run lights and sirens, and the industry standard, what we teach in the police academy, is basically 30 miles above the posted speed limit, as long as you can do it safely.
If you're in an emergency.
Heading to emergency, lights and sirens, as long as you can do it safely. Now, conditions and everything else, that dictates doing it safely. I say it's an industry standard because FHP will charge, even if an officer is running lights and sirens, if they're going above that threshold, they will charge the officer if someone is killed in that accident. That's why I say it's an industry standard.
Anybody else? Those are the questions that I have for you guys, unless anybody has anything to add. Thank you all for coming. It was very informative. Thank you, Hunter, for taking time. Is there anybody in this room who's not registered to vote? Just asking. You can register.